I'm really psyched to be talking with you right now. We clicked last night, I think, for the first time.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
and I was really resonating with what you were saying on a number of different points. It just as a free thinking, open minded human, right?
Right, right.
Just on that level.
Ditto.
So so maybe let's introduce ourselves. Like, who are you? Like, tell people who you are, what you do. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right. I'm Freedom Rain. As it relates to this talk, I've been teaching for 7 years in the public and charter school system. Before that, I was doing after school programming, always working with youth, giving kids who are on probation their first chance at an internship and job. Working with younger students, being mentors, working in music studios, technology labs, creating digital art, things that are central to their passion. I never really planned to be a teacher, but coming through as when I was 19, I started doing volunteer gigs at a music studio slash after school program. And one thing led to another, doing summer camps. And so unwittingly, I've been in the education field for about 10 years total now, feeling like an OG. And just as far as my political views, I call myself the destroyer of narratives. I think when you look at the left and right paradigm, they're fused with so many narratives that are just baked in that often pit people against each other. So I'm down to always dissect that and be a free critical thinker in between the two paradigms. So that kind of sums me up. What about you?
Dude, oh my God, I love it. So right out the gates, we have multiple commonalities. Like, and I knew it as soon as we chimed in yesterday. I knew it. I'm like, wow, this guy is part of my tribe, right?
Right.
Um, so music has always been the thing that moved me the most, right? I'm a freedom fighter. I'm down for the 99%, not down with the 1%. Not even just talking politically. I don't like how our society has become all monopolies, right?
Right.
Like, are you kidding me? Google controls 90% of information, Facebook controls the other 10%. Like, this is bullshit.
All of
This
our
is
news media
crazy.
is owned by six conglomerates. All these networks really are just
Thank you.
six conglomerates. Yep, you're right.
Thank you. So, you know the factoids
Hmm.
exactly. And what he said is absolutely true. Google it. Six
Uh,
companies. And not
well,
just
you
not
said
just
Google.
TV stations, bro. TV, radio,
Yep.
billboards,
Clear.
and
Yep.
newspapers.
Clear Channel. The
Clear Channel is
Reuters.
Satan.
Absolutely. Hmm.
Yeah. Clear Channel is the worst of the worst, right?
Right.
Um, and Rupert Murdoch, this one guy in Australia who's a gazillionaire, he's an oligarch.
Right.
He owns, I don't know, 274 different newspapers. Just and
And and he's not non-biased. We know exactly what Rupert Murdoch thinks. We know the statements he gives to the heads of his news companies. And on the other side, you'll have someone like George Soros. And so Rupert Murdoch plays to the really conservative,
thank you.
really traditional nationalist type people, and he uses the common struggle that we all have, but he paints it in a way as to put people on one side. And then we know George Soros heavily echoes kind of the liberal side. And these two are people who sit at the same table. You know, they toast together, yet if you watch their networks, they pit people against each other in such harshness that you would think that they'd be enemies, but they're just playing the game together like a lot of these elites are, using us as the masquerade, to separate, divide, and conquer.
I couldn't have said that better because people are like, "Oh, Joe Biden. I'm not going to vote for a pedophile." Oh, so you're going to vote for Trump, who's a pedophile? Because it's on record. This is on record that Trump and Epstein were arguing over who was going to take a 13-year-old girl's virginity, and Epstein
Wow.
won, so he raped her. But Trump was on deck.
Trump and Epstein have a lot of pictures together, and one of the things I get into as I'm the destroyer of narratives is just like you said about Joe Biden and the Democrats. There's some people that can believe that the Democrats are the lesser of two evils. They stand for
Fuck
people's
no.
liberties. They stand for this and
Hell
that.
no.
And I'm like,
I
that's a
wanted to believe
joke,
that for 50 years.
right? And then on the
First,
other
I'm
side of that, yeah,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, you go ahead.
Yeah, well, on the other side of that, there's they're painting Trump as this ultimate Hitler figure, right? And if you really look through it, Hitler Trump isn't worse than any other president. Like, that's what the Democrats want you to believe. But at the same time, we're hit with this. On the other side of that, there's this Trump saviorism. Like, he's just an outsider to the deep state. Like, he's innocent and he's working for the greatest interests of people and God. And that's
Right.
that's bullshit too. You got to be able
That's
to look
even
at both sides of the narrative.
That's even more bullshit. Because what is the guy? He's a scammer businessman who has filed bankruptcy 4 times. So he's not even a good businessman. I'm talking about Trump, right? I'm not a Biden fan. Let me just say that. I can't stand brain dead Biden. You know the thing. You know the thing.
You know the thing.
Right? Like, dude, no. You tell me the thing. Otherwise, shut up, go away. You're done. Like, what? He said that in public, dude, and he's still got a job. You couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. That's a miracle.
Right. But then again, it's like George Bush, though. I remember before Joe Biden, George Bush was the official dumb president, right? Like, he could get on the mic, stutter over his words, say the most absolute ridiculous thing, to the point where people were speculating if he had the intelligence of a 5th grader. But to me, that's a ruse, because we know that behind the scenes, the president isn't the ultimate point of power. And like the deep state theory shows us, is that there's so many people in the government and so many institutions that go on unchanged no matter who you vote for. So sometimes, like, it's funny, like when Joe Biden is tripping upstairs and when Biden is slipping down walkways. It's funny to a certain degree, but I think a lot of us can get too focused on the personalities and the quirks of these presidents, and it makes us distracted when really that's not where the power lies. That's not where even the discussion should be. I don't give a fuck how senile Biden is. When people were not wanting to vote for Obama because of cultural issues, they were ready to put in John McCain, who was old as hell. But now all of a sudden that Biden's old ass is in, they act like they'd never put
as bad as people think Trump is, and I mean, he's a reality show host.
Yeah.
Come on. So as bad as you think this guy is, as far as like George Bush started the war in Iraq.
Yeah.
He started the war in Afghanistan.
Right. He started the Patriots Act.
The Patriot Act, the Homeland Security Department.
Mm-hmm.
He expanded the NSA, and the Republican government is supposed to be about smaller government.
Right.
George Bush tripled the size of the government.
Sure.
Tripled it.
If you look at his campaigns, his campaign ads, he was talking about no nation building, small government, all this. But under the guise of a crisis, you get to pretty much expand the powers any way you want. And we saw that with 9/11. We've seen that with COVID. It's about expanding the powers of the government over the reach of the people. Absolutely.
And I don't want to go too deep into it. But you know what? I would actually like you to join the panel on 9/11. I'm going to do a conversation about 9/11, and I would love you to be on the panel. There's 3 of us so far, and I would like you to join that.
I love that.
But I don't want to go into that because that's getting deep in the woods. That's a whole nother show.
Show. And even COVID. Like, I come on here saying to myself, I don't want to talk about COVID, but we always get into it because it's on the people's minds, and people want to know and have honest conversations. But yeah, I definitely love to.
And we could do that another time, but we're not going to get deep in the woods with COVID tonight because we're talking about education and how we got to reform our education system. And we're getting there, people. Be patient, people. We're getting there. But, I just wanted to say that everything started, no matter what you believe. I'm not telling anybody what to believe. I don't try to tell people what to think. I just tell people I want you to think.
Yeah.
Just think. Question everybody. Think for yourself.
Question yourself too.
Mm-hmm. And question yourself all the time. Like, am I tripping?
Right.
Because a lot of times I am.
It's fair. That's a fair thought process.
A lot of times I am. So, I'm not saying I got things figured out. No. It's not like that. I'm just saying, here's a process. And I figured few things out. So I want to share whatever I have figured out. But for the most part, I'm flying by the seat of my pants and trying to figure it out.
Figure it out. Right? That's what life is.
As I go.
Yeah.
But everything started on that one day, bro. Right? That one day,
Man,
9/11. Right?
man,
All of a sudden, our world changed. Right?
yeah.
That one day. So
I can't wait to get on that talk. Definitely, definitely. And real quick, Big Boy might still be coming in. Shout out to Blizak Blizao, to Max Vox Humana, to Lil Dis. What is this? Lil Dix Matter, and shout out to Marlboro Deads.
let's do this. Let's do this. Let's listen
All
to
right, let's go.
people, and then let's get into it.
Right, let's go. Good.
Hello, hello. Shout out to the panel, Freedom
Shout
and
out.
Dave. I hope y'all are
Up.
having a wonderful show. I'm just stopping by showing some support. Bye.
Appreciate you.
Thank you so
Definitely
much.
appreciate
Love
you.
you, Goddess. Thank you
Right.
for your attention. You could be anywhere right now, right? But you're hanging here. That's an honor. That's an honor.
Absolutely.
So,
Marbolo.
So they're putting chemicals in the water that making the friggin' frogs gay. I get all of my
Alex Jones.
news from my reliable source, my uncle in Arkansas.
Alex Jones, good impersonation. His voice has gotten raspier over the years.
That was great. Yeah,
that was great.
I don't know if it's like smoking speed off light bulbs or like what's making the voice harsh, but yeah,
it's that megaphone. He's always yelling in the megaphone for the last 20 years, bro. Damn.
You know what'll make your voice harsh is yelling. Exactly. Everybody just chill out. Can we just talk? Can we just talk? Let's just talk.
Let's talk about it.
Nobody needs to yell.
Right. Transcendent, talk to us. Uh-oh.
How do we do reform without data? And how do we know that the data that we collect will be accurate?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you make changes without data? Let me know.
Great question. We're definitely
Brilliant.
that'll be the first thing we address. We're gonna get through these last ditties, frame the conversation, and then that's a great point to start with. Excellent. Marlboro.
These goddamn Democrats that just want to have sex with China. They're like, here's China's dick. Here's them jerking it off. Like, oh yeah, hit me with a load of communism right in my fucking face. I say, God damn it, my wife's an assault rifle. I'm gonna shoot these goddamn Democrats with my wife.
Infowars.
Okay.
My fellow Americans, it's your 44th president, Barack Obama. I will say, me and Michelle, we really love your stream. It's something I think everybody can enjoy. So keep at it and keep the American spirit.
Appreciate you, bro. Do a Trump next.
Oh my God, Marlboro, that was actually really good.
He got Obama, Alex Jones.
Did he nail Obama right there?
He nailed it, man. And I think Alex Jones, when you look at his body of work, we see that he was throwing Democrats and Republicans under the bus. He was talking about the Bohemian Grove. He had pictures of Reagan. He had the
you
Clintons.
did not. Oh,
and
you
then
did not.
All of a sudden, when Trump gets into office, when Trump gets into office, he's strictly against the Democrats. Like, he changed his tune.
He did.
I'm not feeling
like
that.
he got paid. He got paid, right?
He got paid, and he got scared by that court case. Like, we can ban you on.
Let's roll it back a little bit. You mentioned Bohemian Club.
Yeah.
Dude, I worked there.
I think I heard you on a talk a minute ago talking about how you worked there and how you saw some high class motherfuckers rolling in there, and you worked in the was it the food or the reception? Where did you work? In the front, right?
I was the security guard at their club in San Francisco. So I had keys to everything, access to everything. I would open the joint and I would close the joint. I would open it at 6 a.m. and I would close it at 2 a.m. depending on what shift I had, right? Had keys to every single room. And then they asked me, after working there 2 years, they asked me to go work up at the Grove. I had no idea what it was. I was 24. I wasn't political at all. I was just partying my ass off, living in San Francisco, just fucking whoop, whoop, right?
Yeah.
And just living the life, dog. And so I'm like, hell yeah, go live in a redwood forest for 2 months and get paid? Fuck, sign me up.
Yeah.
The only person that I know that I met was John Wayne's son, but I met
Shit.
George Bush Sr. I met his butler, and this was the coolest motherfucker, one of the coolest motherfuckers I've ever met in my life.
That's crazy.
He called
That's-
raccoons a raccoon. There's a raccoon up in there. And he was from Louisiana, right? Cool
Yeah.
motherfucker. But dude, I don't know how I stumbled upon the guy, but we clicked right away. He's like, "Hey man, all the guys are gonna be gone at about 6 o'clock. Come on up for some drinks." I went up to George Bush's camp, and his butler was fucking getting me drunk on George Bush's booze.
Ah, that's some putting my life in a movie shit.
I basically stole from George Bush.
Power
right?
to you, bro. We should all have.
Can you believe that? But I didn't even know what it was at the time. I mean, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in George Bush's camp. But I didn't know about the New World Order. I didn't know about the 1%.
You were smuggling kids down there. You knew about the tunnel. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah, exactly. I was bringing them from Guatemala. But do you know what I witnessed, bro?
What?
And this is a whole side tangent. We could do a whole nother show about this. I witnessed the cremation of Care, the satanic sacrifice ceremony.
With the giant Molech statue?
Yes. It's a 30-foot owl, and in front of it is like an Aztec sacrifice stone. You know, it's like a waist height, big enough to put a fucking person on. And so this is crazy. Like, I was told I would be fired if I left my cabin after sundown. But I'm like, fuck, how could you not? Are you kidding? And I'm 24, right? So I'm like, fuck you. Right? Rules? What? Huh?
And you're drunk off the president's booze.
And I'm drunk off the president's booze. And all the kitchen help had to stay in like dormitories. Like they had like a low income housing project for kitchen help. Like straight up looked like a project, built like a project,
what?
Right? And they would have keg parties and shit, right? And so I would sneak over there, and that's where the chicks were, right? So I'm like fucking 24-year-old dude, right? Like I'm not gonna sit in this cabin by myself, that got old real quick, right? So I'm like fucking, So I was on. Come on, 24. What are you gonna do?
Dude,
I'm not saying it was right. I'm just saying it happened. So I'm over there, like mixing up with keg parties, walking around, seeing the shit. And then I realized, like, nobody cares if I walk around. Like, if you just act like you own the joint. Like, have you ever snuck into a club?
I actually have.
So there you go. If you act like you own the joint, nobody looks at you.
You look like you belong. Yep.
You just got to think, hey, I belong here. No, I got a ticket right in my pocket. You got to have that mindset. I got a ticket right in my pocket.
Right.
And you just got to believe nobody's going to fuck with you. And I did that. And I went and I watched this sacrifice, bro. Like, crazy.
It was an effigy or it was real?
They call it an effigy. But these are the most powerful people in the world. Do you think it's an effigy? 30,000 children disappear in California every year. California alone. Do you really think it's an effigy?
Right.
Right. Would it be a powerful ceremony if it was an effigy? Hell no. Then they're probably going and drinking their adrenochrome, right?
Right. And at this time, I remember when Bill Clinton was heckled by a crowd member who asked him about the Bohemian Grove, and he was slick with his answer. He was like, "Oh, isn't that where those rich Republicans run around in the woods naked?" And he's downplaying the fact that Democrats were there too. So this is exactly what we see in politics today. Is
the head of B of A, So check this out. Yeah, exactly. Like, did you know that the plans for the atom bomb were finalized at the Bohemian Grove, and that it's protected airspace? If you tried to fly a plane over there, you would be shot down. No questions asked. They wouldn't trail you. They wouldn't track you. Just done.
Done. Yeah.
You're fucking done, because the richest people in the world are here. Like the head of B of A, right? He can't go camping because people are going to assassinate him because they hate him, right? So where can they go? They can go to this one place, or they probably got a bunch of places like this all around the world. But this one, dude, I live 30 miles away from there. It's I'm pointing at it. It's right there. It's right there, right under our nose. Right under our nose. They do it every year. A good friend of mine, his his grandmother ran a whorehouse that catered to that grove, to the Bohemian Grove.
Right. And the thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you're in that kind of company, that's where a lot of these blackmail pictures come from. If there's children or women that are funneled there for sex trafficking, and you're getting pictures taken so that, like
You
Matt
think
Gates,
you're partying with somebody.
exactly, but really it's all about the blackmail.
Set
Let's
up.
hit a couple of more of these ditties and then let's get into
Let's
the
do it.
topic, my dude. All right,
Yes.
let's go.
sir.
Marlboro.
Let's go.
You're like, oh my god, you did really good. Like you sound like kind of like the third grade teacher is like, you're just gonna end up being an alcoholic construction worker. Well, you know that was a pretty fucking
that's
lucky
me.
guess, lady. So
Yeah.
fuck you.
Right. Lucky
No.
guess. Wasn't it?
No, he's the teacher. I'm the construction worker. Let's get that straight right out the gate. Oh,
John, hit us. Ooh, you said something good.
Hey, I second what he said. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, people. So check this out real quick. Dave invited me to this talk. We're talking about education reform and the ways that the system is broken and how it's starting to produce some of the societal discourse and or the social economic class wealth gap that we see. And his tagline says, the U.S. education system is broken. But one quote I heard a lot about, and I'll preface it with this, Dave, and ask you what you think of it. This system is not broken. The education system is not broken. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. What do you think about that?
Well, you nailed it. It's doing what it was designed to do. But what I meant by broken is that it's a triangle trying to fit into a square hole. Right? Because we're telling people, oh, raise your, fucking pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Well, give me some fucking bootstraps.
Give me some boots.
Now, exactly. First of all, can I have some boots, right? Because my feet are killing me. And then, hey, how about a strap or two? Because then I could actually, now we're talking, right? So, I mean, there's so many levels that you could take this. Let me start with my own current environment, right? I live in Santa Rosa, California. In 2017, there was a fire caused by PG&E, and it burned 5,000 houses down, and I had to evacuate at 3:30 in the morning, and the flames were 4 blocks from my house, right? So I put everything I own. I had a shitty little 1994 work truck, right? So I fucking loaded as much shit in that as I could. Drove that, parked that under somebody's the ice skating rink has a solar panel array in their parking lot. So I'm like, oh, this is as protected as you're gonna get. Leave my truck there, then I fucking jog home and start loading shit into my car, right? My cat, and I can't even describe the level of shock, but
could you
I don't
imagine?
I don't want to get too far into the woods there, but I just want to tell people, like, people will ask you, like, if you got 5 minutes to leave your house, what are you going to grab? You can't think in that moment. You can't. You know what I did? I grabbed my toothbrush, just my toothbrush, and I walked it out to my car, and I set that on the passenger seat of my car. Then I went back in, I grabbed the toothpaste. I set that on the passenger seat of my car.
You know you can carry more than a toothbrush in one trip. No, I'm just
but exactly. But that's how, like, in shock
that mind state,
right?
Yeah.
And so people ask you that question, like, what would you grab? That is such a bogus question, because unless you have a go bag, you're going to be a mess. You're going to be a mess. Like, I'm pretty good, right? And I'm good under stress. But dude, I was a mess. 3:30 in the morning, my neighbor comes knocking on my door. Bam, 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 bam. Like, what? And I open the door, and from ear to ear is nothing but, like, red and black, just like everything's on fire from ear to ear. Yeah, just like, oh fuck. And it's right there, like, oh fuck, that's not far away. Like, it looked like it was 8 blocks away. So I fucking load up all my shit, drive up on this overpass, bro, and I watched a gun store burn.
Oh, fireworks.
And all the ammunition went off. and I'm hiding, right? And this one guy who knows way more about guns than I did, obviously, he's like, dude, no, don't worry. The bullets aren't going to fly because they don't have any resistance, right? They're not in there's no barrel to provide resistance for the bullet. So it just goes
Right.
off like a firecracker.
Right.
So I was like, oh, thank you. But like every news station was there, and I got some epic fucking footage of it. But it was freaky. It was the apocalypse, right? Like
Right.
shotgun shells, 357, 22, every different shell you can imagine in a fucking gun store. All as
Mhm.
the whole world is burning. Like Kmart's on fire.
Wow. While you're
The
rushing to
Hyatt
get your shit into that's
the
a
Hyatt
crazy
Regency is
scenario.
on fire, bro. The mobile
Yeah.
home park is on fire. McDonald's is on fire. Oh, dude, yeah, it was the apocalypse.
Real quick,
So
can I say on that is that I was out here in California too, and I remember the sky, the entire sky, including the sun, was red, orange, and the clouds, you couldn't tell the difference between clouds and smoke. The air quality
right,
was so bad. And the cold part about it is when those fools a couple years ago had a gender reveal party and set a
oh my
fire
God,
and burns started a fire that burned a lot of acres, we all jumped on their heads, right? Oh, they need to go to jail. They need to, and sure, it was a stupid thing. But the cold part about it, as you know, is that PG&E has a monopoly on our power and electric gas, right? They have a monopoly on this shit. And then we found out that that fire was started by neglect. They neglected those transformers for years and years, knowing that they needed to be repaired. So just like BP oil, when they spilled all that
yes,
oil
sir.
in the ocean, it's like, how do we hold these too big to fail entities who have the corporate support and sponsorship and are lobbying and are donating to politicians? How do we hold them accountable if they're our only alternative for power? So it just, that fire, and just like the BP oil spill, it highlights the ails of capitalism. There's so many great things about a free market, but when we talk about the corporatocracy coming through the guise of capitalism, it's just a tragedy that they pretty much burned down half of California. It fueled homelessness and gentrification in so many areas.
And they're
Homelessness
still
was
in
our
business.
stealing business, and they don't get any kind of taps on the wrist. They don't get any kind of reform. They don't get oversight. They don't, we don't divvy up, and they don't have to pay us. In fact, what they started doing to protect us from them in California is they started having these things called rolling blackouts, where when it was hot, they would intentionally turn the power off for in large cities, large parts of the cities. But then again, I'm still paying my electric bill. So really, you're making the same amount of money for not giving me power because you fucked up. Like, it
My
makes
mom,
no sense.
my mom lives in a low-income senior housing thing. They just did a
Mhm.
rolling blackout and turned her power off when I was there yesterday, bro.
It's crazy. It ruins the
Like,
food in
what?
your fridge.
All,
All
all of a
that.
sudden, this thing rolls down and bam! You can't use the elevator. Like, what the fuck? For 15 minutes, I'm like, my mom's
Wow.
freaking out. I'm like, oh, well, let me figure out what's going on. I'll figure it out. Like, what the? And then 15 minutes later, boom, comes back
Right.
on. Like, come on, tell me they're not
Right.
just fucking with us. But
Just fucking with us.
exactly. So the rolling blackouts, dude, that's bogus. And what's been proven, like you nailed it, they reduced maintenance and they paid
Mhm.
off shareholders
Mhm.
instead. And this directly leads to our conversation about education, because we're talking about money controlling everything. So this
Yes.
directly leads to it. This is a great lead in. So I've watched this. There's a fantastic expose that Channel
Mm.
10 ABC News did out of Sacramento. This one reporter took it on himself to take on PG&E, and
A
I
real
don't know.
journalist.
Yes, thank you. And he's up to like maybe 11 episodes against
Wow.
PG&E, right? And
Yeah.
it's brilliant. It's called Fire Power Money.
Ooh.
ABC 10,
I'm
and
writing
you can
that
find
down.
it on YouTube for free. Firepower
Writing that
Money
down.
on
Fiber
YouTube.
money. Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it will fire you up, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Um, giggity goo. But what PG&E did, what he exposed, PG&E neglected the things that
Mhm.
hold the wires up
Mhm.
were put in 1943. And there's pictures of them. They're totally worn out. But PG&E adopted this policy of don't replace shit until it breaks. Because why? More
Wow.
profitable. So what happened? They paid out $1 billion to shareholders, the largest shareholder payout in history. Then the 2017 fire happened, and they were fucking responsible for it for neglected fucking maintenance.
Right.
Now, 2 of my friends are tree trimmers, right? I lived in San Francisco for 20 years. If a tree comes anywhere close to your house, you call PG&E. You're like, hey, there's a fucking tree. Boom! Within 24 hours, they would have a fucking truck there. Davy Tree was the company that had the contract. So Davy Tree would show up, cut your shit, make it safe. Boom. Dude, I've lived in this county, Santa Rosa, that burned for 5 years. I've never seen trucks just trimming trees away from lawns.
Right.
They're like right up on them. They don't give a fuck.
Because it's gonna make them money in the end, and it's not gonna harm them.
Sometimes. And what can you do? What can you do? You
They're
can't
a monopoly.
Do anything.
You can't.
They're a monopoly.
There's no alternative. They own the power lines, the gas lines. So it's not like you can just say, "Oh, I'm gonna support your competition."
There's no other company.
Exactly.
And the governor made it that way. I don't want the recall, but I do want to vote Gavin out in the next election. The recall's bogus, but vote him out in the next election, right?
Yeah.
Because he sided with PG&E. Right. But this is a lead into, money has too powerful of an interest in our whole system, and it affects education more than anything. Right? I saw this documentary called Plutocracy with a P, right? Plutocracy.
I heard that.
Plutocracy, divide and rule. You can find it on YouTube. It's the best documentary I've ever seen in my life. And what it talks about is the creation of racism within the U.S., pitting the working class against each other, so that the 1%, so that we don't charge the castle and kill the 1%, right? So better to have you and me fight over some scraps than to talk about why are we only getting scraps.
Yep. And the two-party system is an extension of that. I hate to say it. Democracy in a lot of ways works, but you can tell around the Jacksonian, when Jacksonian democracy and Andrew Jackson was coming into power, this is where they finalized and implemented that system of, look, the American people, obviously, they're starting to get pissed off because the American gentry is selecting the presidents. This is a democracy, but they don't have a vote. So how can we give them the illusion of power? And if you really look into the Andrew Jackson presidency and the campaign for presidency, which was the first populist vote ever held in America, it mirrors the Trump campaign so much, to the point where it's like, these guys are not making new scripts. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They're running the exact same storyline about Andrew Jackson was respected by the military. He was popular. People wanted to vote him in because he was an outsider. He was a people's man against the gentry. When he got voted in, but got cheated out, supposedly, and he campaigned until it was time. It's like literally the same Trump story.
Wait, Andrew Jackson?
Andrew Jackson.
Wasn't he shot?
He was shot. He had all the little bells and whistles.
You know why he was shot?
Motherfucker. Go ahead.
Because he went against the Federal Reserve.
Right. So exactly, and this is played to his outsider kind of. This is an outsider against the system for the people. But another thing that came in, which is related to our talk. Yep. Another thing that comes in is since this was the very first political campaign that people could vote on, we immediately saw the newspapers and media try their new strategy, which goes to this day, of sensationalism. So when Andrew Jackson is running, instead of just talking about policies and what it means for a president, blah, 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 all the first headlines were about, Andrew Jackson stole another man's wife. His wife eloped with him. And can we have somebody like that? And it became about attacking personal smears and the sensationalist shit to have people focused on the personality. Just like we were talking about earlier, Joe Biden stuttering in his double neck, or Trump, how orange he is, whatever little shit that they can bring up to make us talk, fight, argue, and laugh about is more important than what's actually being voted on. And all that started in one campaign, just like you said. So plutocracy is in full effect, and I think people are still trying to wake up out of that. Speaking as a member of the Black community, we know that back in the day, in the 1800s, Republicans were, as you would call, the progressives or liberals, so to speak. You had a lot of
Right.
black
The parties did a
politicians.
flip. Yeah.
Yeah, they had all the black politicians running for them. They were supposedly the party that wanted to end slavery. And we know that
Mhm.
not the Dixiecrats, but the Democratic South was very conservative
Fighting
and
against that.
fighting against it. And
the end of slavery.
right, and that's where we saw the birth of this Southern strategy language, where you can say something like state rights, but secretly appeal to racists who want to keep
Mhm.
slavery, because I'm fighting for states' rights. But what the underlying
sounds
guise
good,
is, it
But
sounds good.
what you're doing is fighting to keep Mississippi able to do what they're doing,
Exactly. So
which is some fucking third world bullshit,
exactly. So
fifth
and
world bullshit.
right, and a lot of black people who are still voting Democrat, voting blue just by default, don't really realize you have to look at the 50s and 60s, around that time when the party started flipping. You have to look at the Civil Rights Bill and understand that Lyndon B. Johnson, after he got in office, he wasn't recording saying this, but it's a pretty popular quote that he is almost confirmed saying, but of course I haven't heard it, so I can't say it. But he said, "I'll have these niggers voting blue for the next 40 years." And when you look at the policies that are enacted to really placate and try to be a nanny state or look out for black people, it just shows that not only everybody's mixed up in this. Black people are being tricked and uh, coerced into believing that one side has their best interests in mind. When we, and as you being an Irish, of having the Irish blood, you already know about the discrimination that the Irish had in the 1800s and 1700s, that they were almost
Oh,
considered
yeah.
second-class citizens too. The
Dude,
Chinese exclusion. Go ahead.
there was a point, bro, where Irish were third class citizens. When they were laying the railroads, and I learned this recently, right? And I have no bigoted bone in my body. I hate the 1% and oppression, right? I'm a working fool, been a working fool my whole life. My dad was actually on the 3 buses of seminary students that went to the fucking Martin Luther King March in '68.
Yeah.
So, like, that is my blood, right? I am a warrior for the underdog.
Right.
Totally who I am. And I totally just lost my train of thought. God damn it.
You're a warrior for the underdog. But
There we go.
yeah, but I'll say this, and then maybe your thought will come back. Is we know that after Bacon's Rebellion in the 1600s, where you had poor whites, poor indentured servants who were also white. That's part of history that people like to phase out. Is that there are white, of course, white, Irish, and again, there is no white at this time in the 1600s. You're Irish.
No, you're an
British,
immigrant. You're a piece of shit immigrant.
You're German. You carry your nationality with you. Black,
Right.
You're African or sons of slaves. But after Bacon's Rebellion, you had free blacks and poor whites banding together. They burned down the federal building, and they rose up together. So what you're talking about, plutocracy, is absolutely right. We saw a staunch change in the direction to make sure that blacks and whites never got along again. And
absolutely. And I remember what I was thinking about. So
go ahead, get it.
During the laying of the railroad, right?
Yeah.
So the Chinese finished the western section of the railroad, but the eastern section was Western, which is us, right? Yeah. But the eastern section was laid by Irish, dude. And one Irishman would die for every mile of track laid.
Wow.
And they used Irish people because they were cheaper than an ox and they were cheaper than a slave. They were disposable. So for a little window of time, Irish people were the shittiest little disposable piece of shits. That weren't human, didn't matter. Oh, they're just all drunks. They fight a lot. Like bap, right?
Stereotypes, all that.
Yeah, all that bullshit. Do you know the paddy wagon?
I know that phrase.
That's named after it's slang for Patrick, which is
an
popular Irish name. So they named it the paddy wagon. Let's go get a bunch of paddies.
Wow. And that's so important, because I think, especially in 2020, when we see the divide, Trump is made supposedly to speak for the poor hardworking, overlooked white man, right? And this is the language he says, even though he says he stands for all Americans, we know that this through
Well,
Southern strategy is what he appeals to. But
right.
what that does is it further pits us against each other, because here you have a man in Trump who is a multi-billionaire, whose father was a multi-billionaire, whose
Right.
grandfather was a multi-billionaire in Germany, who came here in the 1800s. This doesn't at all reflect the Irish and the other poor whites and indentured servants in America.
No. There's
He
no
doesn't have.
bootstraps
There's no bootstraps in his
in his
bloodline,
lineage.
in
No.
his lineage
Fuck
at
no.
all. And
Silver
so
spoon.
exactly. So I think the really important thing why I bring that up is this is where, so when we talk about white privilege, the first thing I hear a lot of white people say, which has a lot of validity to it, is, "Hey, I don't have anything for free. I work for what I get. Just
No,
because
that's
I'm white, I
bullshit.
don't get anything for free." And part of that is true, but here's the thing: when we're
No.
talking about the social economic wage gap that is plaguing America, that started in the 1800s till now, which drives a lot of these inequities, you have to look at that time where, just like you were saying, the plutocracy came into the forefront. Is like, look, we can't have these poor working class people come together. Look what happened with Bacon's Rebellion. So they formulated
Right.
these things which became known as white privilege laws, whereas the white man could vote, not yet women, and definitely not black folks, but the white man can vote, the white man can own property, the white man can have special property taxes that allow him to get loans. All these things started coming into play, right?
Oh
And
yeah.
this wasn't for white people's benefit. It was not. What this was to get them to buy into the white identity. And then you had things like blackface parties, where it would try to entice people to hate, to tease, and to put themselves on a class above white people. So even though,
Yep.
just like when you have black people getting things like welfare, you think that the government is giving you welfare to help you, they are absolutely not. And so that was the white man's version of welfare in those days. And of course, I forgot the law, of course, that blacks and whites couldn't marry. Whatever we could do to with policy and law, drive these
Other
people
than,
against each other, you know?
and to make them other than, right? As opposed to like,
Exactly.
hey, wait, we're both fucking working class stiffs, man. We just want
Right.
to work all day and then have a couple beers to ease the pain in our back, have a good night's
Right.
rest, get a
Yeah.
good meal, get up and do her again, maybe
Which is
fall
what
in
we
love if we're lucky, you know?
yeah, exactly. The common Which is the commonality that we share. And the reason I brought this up in relation to the education system, which we're talking about today, and education reform, and the education system being broken for people, but being but doing exactly what it was designed to do by the elites, is in the
Yeah.
1800s. Names like the Rockefeller come up when they're creating the American public school system that was based off of the Prussian model, which was very oriented, like, as I think you mentioned in the other talk, by coal companies and other companies who needed workers. And so it
Absolutely.
was made
To train
compulsory.
factory workers.
Exactly. As George Carlin said, to train people who were just smart enough to push the button, but not smart enough to ask questions. Um,
Yep.
and so
Why
we
am I
see
pushing the button? Shut up. Bam.
exactly, which is why back in those days, students would raise their hand, ask questions. If you got out of line, you'd get that ruler smacked to the hand. They stopped doing that in the 60s in my grandmother's class, but she was telling
Oh,
us
dude.
about that. Like, they would smack the shit out of you in school, teachers, and it was perfectly legal and encouraged. So we know that the education system was designed by the elites for poor people to be free, but it was also
And the
made Oh, don't
textbooks
even
were
start on the
written by
textbooks.
them. So the companies
Oh my God. Go ahead.
write the textbooks
Right.
so they control even, a teacher can't choose a textbook, right?
Right.
Yeah. You could
It's in your
choose
classroom.
between a selection. It's a
Yep.
pre-chosen selection that you can choose within, right?
Exactly. Absolutely. And in the late 1800s, the public school system, which was designed by names that we know like Rockefeller and other elites, was made compulsory, which means for the first time, if you don't send your kid to the public school, you can get arrested. Like, you have to send your kid to this.
Can
And
we
so we
say
see.
Kamala Harris? Just a little sidetrack. When Kamala
Mhm,
Harris was the DA of San Francisco,
mhm,
she wanted to pass a law where
mhm,
kids that were truant in
mhm.
school, their parent would be arrested. Now
Yep.
tell me how most of these kids are probably living in a one-parent home already, right?
Right.
Lack of supervision, which is why they're not going to school, yada yada yada.
Right. Parents
Now you're
working their ass off. Right.
Now you're going to throw that parent in jail because their kid didn't show up? How's that going to help anybody? Now you just throw that kid in foster home, right? And then into jail.
Benefit? Yeah,
and then
exactly.
into a for-profit prison.
Thank you. And that's one of the things that came up on the last panel we were on together is the statistic that the private prison system in the state of California, because that's what me and you are both familiar with, they judge literacy rates in 3rd grade as a direct correlation to how many people are going to be dropouts, which is a direct correlation to how many prison beds they need. So they literally look, if you're at 3rd grade, if a certain number of 3rd graders are not sufficient in reading skills, they build prison cells and beds to that number. So here they are predicting, well, this is how many jail cells we'll need. So just like you said, that school to prison pipeline is designed and it's working perfectly. You know what I'm saying?
It's humming on all cylinders.
Yeah, and they've got
that
their
machine
math
is
worked
well
out.
oiled. How
it.
sick is that? How fucking disgusting is that? That we could be spending a tenth of that money on bringing those people's, on educating those people.
Right.
Special ed, individual ed. Like I have dyslexia and ADHD, right? So all through school until I got into college, all through school, I thought I just can't do school.
Right.
But no, it's just if I don't care about it, I can't focus.
Right.
But what I care about, I hyper focus, dude.
Which is why, again, when we're talking about the school system based off the Prussian model, built by these huge industry leaders and elites, it's specifically made so that you don't find your niche. You're not looking for your passion, Dave. You're not finding trade skills that you're passionate about that you're going to make a living for yourself. What you're doing is you're getting a basic sense of information that you can show that you can regurgitate, absorb, and repeat information, which is
Where was the Battle of Wounded Knee? When did the Battle of Wounded Knee happen?
Exactly.
Not why did it happen?
And
like,
what
the fuck led to the Battle of Wounded Knee? And why was there even a battle? Why couldn't we get along? Why didn't we do democracy? I thought we were all about democracy, which is diplomacy.
Right. And again, when we talk about the plutocracy dividing the black and whites, which had a huge part in the school system, because like you said, we know who's writing the textbooks. And we know that, just like you brought up in the Battle of Wounded Knee, we're framing that entire discussion on a normacy of white nationalism as it's opposed to the Manifest Destiny doctrine, whereas we're not including the voices. Narrative. We're not including the voices of the Native Americans. We're not including their point of view. We're not including their stories. We're not including how they saw it. This is written strictly in a sense of how it relates to U.S. politics. So, and you need to be able to relate that information.
We're basically pissing all over it.
Exactly. To the children.
Their culture, the children, oh my God. And cultures that had been here for tens of thousands of years, dude.
Exactly,
right? Bro. There were no savages, Nick. Now, I don't know. I'm super curious. So I go down the YouTube rabbit hole all the time. But they're excavating these mounds and finding giants in Ohio and Iowa and da-da-da. And these are 50,000-year-old remains.
Bro, why did you go there? The thing about it is that as soon as they got to America, they had been uncovering these bones and burial mounds of giants since the 1800s, since the 1700s, and back in the late 1900s, newspapers and journalism was a lot more free than it is today. So there were many newspapers with pictures of these bones, art editorials, people asking, "Yo, what the fuck is going on?" But the Smithsonian Museum started buying up these bones and just burying, hiding this stuff, so that to the point now, if you find some giant bones, trust. Like you said, Rupert Murdoch owns 72 different newspapers. If he doesn't want that shit,
272.
If he doesn't want that shit to get out, bro, it's not getting out. It's not like
you're not going to hear about it.
You're not going to hear about it. And just to what you're
And
saying, as far as we're talking about the natives, is look, since the 1600s and 1700s, when the pilgrims and every other race was coming over here, because the oral tradition was so strong, Native American elders were telling people about these giants with 6 digits on their both hands. They had 6 fingers and 2 rows of teeth, and they had reddish hair. They had been
yeah,
telling this story to everyone, all of them. It wasn't a hoax to them. This was fact to them. And the way we are, the way the American school system was built is these are savages, these are hoax, this stuff isn't true, while they're actively burying the information. For example, Gobekli Tepe, which is a super old civilization that people didn't even know existed, far beyond when we thought civilizations like that were being built. The Native Americans completely described this and told them exactly where it was. And again, we discredited them. We hid that. We didn't want the
oh, it's a
public to
myth.
know.
Oh,
It's a
it's a
myth.
myth.
It's folklore, right? So yeah, you're
What is a
absolutely
myth?
right.
You know what a myth is? It's
Mm,
oral history.
yes.
So oral history, and we're learning this, that it's legit. I mean, there's this.
Yep.
So, dude, oh my God, we got so many commonalities. So Darren Kuyu, you hip to that? That
I
sunken
don't know
city?
that name.
Okay, Darren Kuyu. They found this off of the coast of India.
Mm.
I might be confusing it. So there's 2. There's an underground city in Turkey that goes 12 stories underground and
Holy
houses
shit.
20,000 people, and they estimate it was built 12,000 years ago. And there's oxygen shafts, square oxygen shafts that go down to
Oh,
every single room. Like, how the fuck? We couldn't
that's
drill that today,
crazy.
right?
That's
So
crazy.
so
And
that
just an
exists. And then
yeah.
there's this sunken city off, I think this is Darren Kuyu, the sunken city off of India. They
Mhm.
found 2 sunken cities under, I think, 200 feet of water, where a river used to let into the ocean, but now, after sea level rise, after the end of the last ice age,
Mhm.
now the cities are underwater, but they carbon dated
Mhm.
it 9,500 years old. So we used to think cities were only
6,000s or something.
5,000.
Yeah, 5,
Yeah,
6,000, right.
5, 6. So that everything's being rewritten, bro.
Right.
And,
And
and that's the tip of the iceberg.
that's the tip of the iceberg. And the thing about Gobekli Tepe, I think it's dated to be almost 11,000
Way
years
older.
old. And the thing is, this
I think
check
it's
this out.
50,000 years old.
You're right. I think I wanted to be
Gobekli.
conservative, but I think it is upwards of 20,000 years old. The thing is though, this city was intentionally buried, bro.
Right.
But
To
by the
hide it.
inhabitants, we don't know. By people shortly thereafter, it's been buried for thousands of years intentionally. That just shows you how little we know that a society upwards of 20,000 years ago would have this amazing complex city built and would say, up, time to go, and intentionally bury it and move the fuck on. How many times has life and civilization been reset on this planet? We don't even know. And the reason
Wow.
this ties back into our education system is we're taught a very narrow band of history, right? And again, it's primarily meant to divide white and black, and all races really, but primarily white and blacks. And we know this
Well,
because
it's meant to divide everything. Socioeconomic, right? Like,
yes,
a Ferrari driving person is taught to look at you and me like, fucking peasant.
right,
That's
absolutely,
that's built into the commercials to everything, right?
exactly. And that's what I was going to get into is like Charles Darwin, when he came out with The Origin of Species.
Thank you.
This is where we see the white and black classifications come in. You no longer have Europeans who are coming here calling themselves, well, what are you? Oh, I'm German American, I'm Irish American, I'm Irish, I'm Portuguese. No, all of a sudden we have this broad term called white, which all these people have to now fit into. Same thing with
And
black, right?
what is white? Like, nobody's
It
really
makes
white
no
because,
sense.
like, I'm
Nobody's
I'm
really white
looking.
or black.
I got this like bookshelf in front of me, and it's painted white, right? And it
Yeah.
looks way different than I do. I'm like all
Right.
peach. I'm all peachy colored, like
Yeah.
I sunburn easy, like,
Right. 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 But it's so
Can't.
important because that's where we see the hierarchy come into play. Of course,
Right.
blacks and Africans are at the very bottom.
And there's no such thing as black either,
There's
right?
no
I mean,
such thing as black either.
mean,
There's some
you take-
people who are very, very, very dark, but it's not jet
Sure.
black. Everybody's got a hint of red or a hint
Thank
of,
you. Thank you.
exactly.
and there's
so-
some motherfuckers that are light as hell, and that's
Exactly.
still black. So like,
Exactly.
so it's not black, it's not white, and is anything in life or the universe black or white? Yes
Thank
or
you.
no?
Thank
No,
you.
it's not.
Nope.
Nothing is.
Especially in the natural world, we can come up with a pigment of paint or something white out and make it as white as possible. It's still not completely white, but in nature, when you see
That's what I
white
was
rocks
mentioning.
or something, it's such a rich balance. But anyway, I say that to
Yeah.
say that Irish, and so you have these rich elite people who are funding the explorers, who are funding the archaeologists. Everything that they go out and find has to be whittled down to fit the narrative that they want to teach. And we know that Irish people were put into that category of being less than the Aryans, less than other white people. Asiatic people were put at a certain rank. Black people were put at the bottom. This is literally a social hierarchy that was taught by an evolutionist, Charles Darwin. And then the other thing we think of when we're talking about the education system and the way it was built to teach us a certain mindset that is still prevalent today and is easy to make us be divided and conquered is we have to talk about Sigmund Freud. And we have to talk about all the work he did in psychoanalysis and the study of how the human works on a subconscious level, the iceberg theories, right?
Mhm.
And once he started publishing his papers, first and foremost for the government, is he started saying this is what people's unconscious centers are. These are people's bias. These are people's hidden desires. These are people's almost to a sense the way you can manipulate people. And so when you look at ads from before Sigmund Freud, we see here's a car, the car drives, buy it. We see this is a product, get the product. After Freud, we start to see then the commercials where the guy
Chevy, hot dogs, apple pie, USA.
Yeah, well, exactly. But also we have the Calvin Klein looking white guy with the square jaw in a nice suit getting
Right.
in a nice car with a hot
Yep.
woman. What the fuck
Exactly.
does any of that have to do with the car? Absolutely nothing. It's marketing.
Nothing.
And it pulls on your subconscious biases. And so we saw this all throughout the commercial industry. He revolutionized it, and they used his studies to manipulate humans and their train of thoughts and public opinion on so many levels. And you can see that
yeah.
when you look at the history of the Philip Morris cigarette brand. You're literally selling people shit that kills them, but they market it as cool, sophisticated. It's healthy. Back in the day, scientists would not say that smoking for you was bad, even though they knew it would. There was active citizen-based groups.
It worked.
It worked so good. And the last thing
I
I'll say, because
smoked
I've been rambling for a minute. Go ahead.
As a kid, I smoked because I thought it was cool. As soon as they allowed us,
man.
as soon as they allowed us to smoke in, wait for it, high school. We had a smoking section in high school when I went to high school.
Shut up.
It wasn't cool anymore then,
bro. Yeah.
because I'm like, what? I can do it? Oh, in fact, there's no fun there.
Right. I'm trying to be a rebel here. I'm trying to be Fonzarelli.
My dad was a minister, trying to be a rebel over here.
All right, thanks for tuning into another episode and another thing with Dave. Please follow, subscribe, and share. I'm on all social media and another thing with Dave. And keep seeking the truth.